So you may have noticed Povember got kind of canceled because I could not keep up with my foolish twice a week schedule. Um, but oops, now it's kind of back for a second. Hello, friends and enemies. Welcome to Horror and Inconvenience, where things are usually spooky and always weird. Um, Today is a quick check in about my third completed book of the Read What You Own Bronze Tier Challenge, and that is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. Um, this is a horror fantasy novella that expands on the story The Fall of the House of Usher. The Poe story I just talked about on here. Um, I'd been meaning to read this for a while, and in my book buying spree right before I took the plunge into the Read What You Own challenge, I finally grabbed it. I really, really enjoyed this book. I highly recommend this to everybody. This is the first time I've read T. Kingfisher, and I found her writing really compelling because it mixed certain briskness and wry humor that I find in the prose of a lot of my favorite historical fantasy with genuine creepiness and the occasional really beautiful description. This is not someone who writes in a particularly flowery style, but she can definitely put the image in your head in a way that's not so entirely straightforward that it feels like a movie script. Something that really annoys me sometimes in horror novels, especially. Um, just good writing. The characters are really compelling, and, you know, more humanized. Poe's characters are really just a scaffolding on which horrible things can happen. Kingfisher's characters are more fleshed out, more sympathetic, and therefore they increase the terror of what's happening because you care what happens to them. Um, this is mushroom based horror. I don't want to go too into detail on it because I think discovering the particular premise is part of the fun here. But we love us some fungal horror here on Horror and Inconvenience. From, you know, the king himself, Lemony Snicket, to M.R. Carey's The Girl with All the Gifts, Jeff Vandermeer, Sylvia Moreno Garcia, mushroom horror all the way. So this makes use of that. The main character is also queer. They come from a small Eastern European country where the language has 7 sets of pronouns, one of which is a gender neutral set used exclusively for soldiers. Um, this country has something called sworn soldiers, where people who have been assigned female at birth can join the army, and once they swear to become soldiers, their gender becomes soldier. So if you're willing to potentially sacrifice your life, you can escape gender. Cool concept, for sure. Definitely had me invested in the world building, which I didn't expect to be quite this elaborate for such a really short novel. Uh, there's a lot of neat stuff like that in here. This is just altogether a delight of whimsical discovery and genuine gothic spooks. I also want to highlight, and I know I'm becoming a broken record on this, but it matters to me, the beauty of this book. The cover design, incredible. But the book itself. So the cover under the dust jacket is nice, but what really gets me with this one is the end papers. These were designed by Ursula Vernon, an artist that I primarily know from her children's books. She wrote the Dragon Breath series, which is an absolute favorite of mine, a classic of fantasy humor. And I love them. Look how beautiful and spooky, how goth and yet evocative. God, it's good. It's real good. Um, so yeah, What Moves the Dead? Super fun. Don't miss it. If you read The Fall of the House of Usher first, that's kind of a fun addition, but honestly, I feel that you could probably get just as much out of this by reading it before you read The Fall of the House of Usher as after. So if you haven't gotten around to that story yet, and since I know it's one of Poe's most famous stories, most of you probably have. But if you haven't, don't let that stop you. This book's amazing.